Bad news, Jaron boots Ennis. Who will he fight? Eddie Hearn just did a brand new interview, but peep this. Eddie Hearn is talking about all of the fighters that he can't get in the ring for one reason or another because allegedly they turned down offers. And I want to give my thoughts and expand as the best in the business, and it's not even close. Now, Eddie Hearn, he's definitely in front of the media. He did a brand new interview where Eddie Hearn was talking about the potentials and the people he wants to make a fight for Jaron Boots Ennis. And some of the people that he stated that he wants to have fight were unifications. Guys like Mario Barrios, who is the WBC champion. He got elevated to the WBC champion belt because Terrence Crawford has moved up to 154 pounds to fight Israel Madrimov. So he's alleging that he sent a massive offer to him, Mario Barrios. The only problem is what I told you guys. Mario Barrios is in talks, and it's heavily rumored that he could come back at the end of the year. He just had a baby. Congratulations to him on that. And he could come back to face Manny Pacquiao. Again, this is a no-brainer. It goes without saying. If you are a Mario Barrios, Mexican-American out of Texas, they might put him on a card with Fundora and Errol Spence. And you have an opportunity to fight Manny Pacquiao. I believe he's supported by woo, right? You're going to take it. Point blank, period. So a lot of people are running around with what Eddie Hearns is saying, and they're running around with these narratives that everybody is shook, but that's not it at all. Here's why. Again, we'll go through the list. Mario Barrios, if you can have a fight with Pacquiao, Pacquiao's done more than Jaron Boots Ennis is. He's an A-division champ. He's a bigger name. He's a bigger brand. And it's definitely a winnable fight. Pacquiao came back. Some people said he didn't look so good in his exhibition. Things like that. And he's older. Pacquiao's 45. But it still makes a lot of business sense. Barrios, again, his girl was pregnant and he just had a baby. So he wasn't going to fight anybody probably during that time. He wanted to be with his family. Now that he's given birth, or his girl's given birth, it falls in line with the Pacquiao fight. Jaron Ennis, great fighter, talented fighter. I've always bigged up Jaron Ennis on the channel, but Jaron Ennis, it doesn't make sense for Barrios to fight a fight with Jaron Ennis on another platform like dazn if you could work with your own people and fight a bigger name in Manny Pacquiao. A lot of people confuse this, and I've already talked about this. There's a lot of clowns in the sport of boxing, both boxing media as well as fans. They want to play dumb. When Shakur Stevenson fights a fight, he teams up with Eddie Hearn, despite calling out bigger fights and calling out Gervonta Tank Davis, and he picks a guy, Joe Cordina, coming off of a loss, a guy who nobody wants to see him fight, a guy who was stopped in his last fight, and the same fans who will question why Barrios would try to pursue a Pacquiao fight because it represents more and he'll make more money and he doesn't have to go to an ops network, right? You get to work with the same people. They'll question Barrios, but then when it comes to Shakur taking on Cordina, when dazn has other people that are on that platform that make greater fights and other fights and fighters that are available that make bigger business sense, they'll say, oh, Shakur's getting his money. Let him get his money. Turkey paid him out. So why is it cool for Shakur Stevenson or Terrence Crawford to bust these moves that really don't necessarily help the sport of boxing? There weren't fights that people were asking for. Those are okay, but then you don't get it for Mario Barrios. Then Eddie Hearn says in this interview Stanionis. He says we sent an offer to Stanionis, and basically he says Stanionis turned it down, right? Stanionis responded, and Stanionis said, that's cap. I talked to my advisor. Nobody said anything to me about a fight. So he said, I don't know what you're talking about, basically. Eddie Hearn said something to the effect of check again with your people. And then Stanionis put out a new tweet, and Stanionis said, oh, come back with a real offer. I checked with my people, and basically you lowballed us. That's basically what he's saying. And I'll try to put it on the screen so you guys can see it. So 2 PBC fighters down, Stanionis and Barrios. Then the third is a top ranked fighter who, just like Barrios, became a champion and was elevated because they were interim champions, and Crawford has moved out of the division. And that's Brian Norman Jr. Same thing. Brian Norman and his team says they are down to fight Jaron Boots Ennis. They said they simply put out a counter offer, right? And Brian Norman's dad has done interviews. He's posted on social media. They said we're down for the Jaron Ennis fight. We just got to make it make sense. Because if not, Top Rank has plans for us, and we're going to just go that way. But we will fight Jaron Ennis. Eddie Hearn is very clear to see what he's doing. See, and this is the thing. You got people who say, oh, Boxing Ego, you're wrong. All right. Name an American star that Eddie Hearn has produced, meaning a guy teamed up with Eddie Hearn that didn't have a brand and wasn't like a household name in America, and then Eddie Hearn, DAZN, and Rematchroom made him into an American star. Let me know in the comment section, right? You did a couple fights with Devin Haney. Devin Haney's biggest fight was his Ryan Garcia fight. And that's the fight where Eddie Hearn wasn't even the lead promoter, right? It was a Golden Boy show. So you didn't even do Devin Haney's biggest fight, even though you had several Devin Haney fights that you worked with him on, right? You had Danny Jacobs. You gave him Chavez Jr. and things like that. And then he did get the Canelo fight, but that's only because Canelo picked him. And Canelo, has that ability to kind of pick and choose who he wants. It's not something that Eddie Hearn did, right? Canelo just picked a unification with Danny Jacobs. So again, you tell me what star Eddie Hearn has produced here in America. Same thing with Boots. When Boots first signed with Eddie Hearn, I told you this was to come. If you're short-sighted, you were going to say Ego was wrong. But as time wears on, it looks like Boxing Ego was right. You're making more per fight up front, but what is it doing for your legacy? What is it doing for the long term? What is it doing in terms of giving you the big fights that get you future huge paydays or make you into a superstar? Because so far, it looks like Jaron Ennis, he's already completed his fight with David Avanesian. That didn't really do anything for him. His fights on Showtime were better names than David Avanesian, a fight or two removed from Terrence Crawford, one punch knocking him out with busted gloves. So that was just a replacement fight that did very little to further Jaron Ennis' standings. Now, Eddie Hearn is doing pretty much damage control and saying, hey, I sent out offers to all these people, but they all turned it down. Listen, you are the promoter. People say Turkey has all the money in the world. It is your responsibility, you and your team, along with Boots' team, to secure the big fights. No one else seems to be complaining. When have you ever heard Gervonta Davis's team complain that they can't get the fights that they want? Right? They just make it happen. Frank Martin, we're fighting you. Ryan Garcia, we're fighting you. Here are the terms. Done, and doner. It's not a bunch of crying. It's not a bunch of press and interviews saying, hey, we offered 5 people the fight and they don't want it. So the play is simple. The play is damage control. We can't get none of the big fights. We can't get them across the line. So we're just going to play the blame game. Blame Barrios, blame Stanionis, try to make them look bad. Say Brian Norman's holding the fight up. That's 3 different fighters with 2 different promoters, and the end result is still the same. I hope you guys understand that. Either you're going to get Jaron Boots Ennis a big fight, because here's the thing. While some people, again, being short-sighted, they're going to say, oh, that's because PBC. Okay, but Brian Norman is not a PBC fighter. He's with Top Rank, and they can't get that over the line. Or what about Terrence Crawford? He's a free agent working with Turkey, working with the same people that Eddie Hearn and Boots work with, and then they refuse to make that fight. What about Virgil Ortiz? So there's still other options. What about Jaron Ennis versus Israel Madrimov? There's other big fights. Now, it might require something like Boots to either fight Madrimov at a catch weight or move up to 154, but there's other better fights. They're not making those fights. They're just simply content blaming other people, putting the blame on them, saying we can't get it done. We can't get this fight across the line for X, Y, and Z, to try to make it look like Boots is the boogeyman. But in essence, you could get these fights done. You just got to pay like you weigh. You know what I mean? And no one really truly cares about what you can't get done. The only time people care is when you can complete it. People didn't care about the negotiations for Mayweather versus Canelo. You just wake up, Mayweather announces he's fighting Canelo. That's all we care about. And then actually seeing the fight. So I see the play. It's been the play. Eddie Hearn is not the first to do this. I've seen Top Rank do this. Like, oh, we have to fight Pacquiao versus Jesse Vargas and Brandon Rios. And then they'll just blame and finger point, say it's Floyd's fault because Floyd won't fight us. But again, it's your team, your promotion. It's up to them to make the big fights. They said they have endless amounts of money in Saudi Arabia and oil money. Why can't you get Jaron Boots Ennis a fight that people actually want to see? So like I stated, and I still believe this, I truly believe Boots' next fight will likely be Karen, a guy he's already fought. And this just becomes damage control. And they figure, hey, we'll put this bad fight in Philly and just blame everybody else for our shortcoming. And then the fans will say, oh man, and try to come up with excuses like Jaron Ennis, he's being ducked by everybody. So we got to make this fight. Just like they do with Shakur Stevenson. We got to fight Cordina because of Tank and Pitbull and everybody's ducking. But like I said, it's 2024, a few months left of this year. No one really cares. They just care about the end result. Are you making the big fights or are you not making the big fights? If you're making the big fights, we'll tune in for them. If not, you can keep pointing and passing the blame and pointing the finger, but ultimately no one cares. And I told you this, and this was one of my fears for Jaron Boots Ennis. And I said that unapologetically. There's a lot of spineless cowards in the sport of boxing. And when I said this, it was unpopular. People said, oh, you're hating on Jaron Boots Ennis. He's going to get activity. Yeah, I never doubted he would get activity, but he's getting activity with fights that I don't want to see, that aren't better than the fights he was doing on Showtime. So what's the point? Boom. Checkmate. You never know.